If you are a domestic violence abuser, there are some facts that you should know and some moral issues you need to face up to. The first thing you need to know is that legal consequences of domestic violence are very serious.
I think it's important for people to know that domestic violence is being looked at much more carefully than it has been in the past. Law enforcement officers are being trained in the dynamics of domestic violence, what to look for, what to see, what to hear. The judges are receiving training. We're looking at the number of fatalities in the United States. We're looking at a lot of issues, and it's not something that's going to be kept in the family, that's going to be brushed aside. We're working toward zero tolerance to violence toward women and children and to men also. You can go to jail, you can go to prison when convicted, and some people will tell you, well, you may just get probation, you may get a batterers intervention program, you may have to go to substance abuse, you may go straight to jail and straight to prison. And that can really take you away from your jobs, that can take you away from your family, and it can also be some monetary issues that come up later in life that will stay with you for a very long time.
Some abusers want to pass the blame for their behavior onto other people and refuse to look at the real-life consequences of their action.
You know, blaming what you've done on everybody else is so immature. You talk about you want to be treated like adults, you want to be treated like a man, then be a man. The whole world is not responsible for your behavior. You are. You can't change anyone else's behavior. You can only change yours.
Taking prompt and decisive action to deal with your problem is something you need to face up to.
Look at what you're doing to the people who love you the most, and look at it in the context of, would you want your daughter, your mother, or your sister being treated the way that you are treating the people in your own life? And to just think of it in simple terms. If you don't want people beating your mother, don't beat other women that are related to you.
If you have a problem being a batterer, the first thing that you need to know and to understand is you've got to stop immediately. It's not something that, well, I think I'll cut it off a little bit. You know, maybe I won't be as violent. Maybe I need to change the way I do this and do that. You need to stop what you're doing and stop it right now. I believe the most important things that you need to understand as an abuser is that you do not have to continue in your life with the behavior that you're exhibiting right now. You can stop, evaluate yourself, look at where you are in your life, look at your past, and not become that same person and not continue to be that same person.
The next thing you need to know is that there are services specifically for those who want to stop being involved in domestic violence abuse.
Find someone that you can be open and honest with it about. Someone that's not going to be judgmental. Talk about it. The more you talk about it, the more you see where chances are you were the problem. Talking about it helps you open up and accept things as they were, and also see where you were at fault.
One of the first things you do when you realize that you are a batterer or that you have the potential to hurt other people is seek out in your community what's referred to now as a batterers intervention program. Call domestic violence shelters and ask, is there resources for men who are batterers, and they can very quickly refer you to those providers in your community. Call your healthcare professionals. Doctors have received and medical health centers have received training in recent years to where they can help guide you, or they can guide you to the person who can give you that information. A batterers intervention program is designed to provide education to a person who has been designated either by the court system as a batterer or by family members, by victims, someone who's recognized, or we hope will recognize, that they have domestic violence tendencies or they have actually demonstrated such. And our job is to educate that person and educate people around it better to where they understand what they're doing, that it is wrong. One of the first things that we try to impart into a person when they come into the Batterers Intervention Program is you really need to take charge of yourself and take charge of how you respond to external stressors or how you respond to what other people say to you, and just be responsible for your own behavior. You're the person who's in the program. Whoever it is that you feel like is responsible, they're not here. You are here, and it's time to fix you. This is your individualized program for you to educate you on how to be proper, how to be in an equal partnership relationship.
I'm going to a transition house so me and my wife can work back into our marriage instead of being forced, from when I'm released. That way we can work back into it. I suggested it to her. She was happy for it because her friend went through the same thing, and the example that she used was her friend was scared for like the first 6 months that her husband, once he was released, was going to resort back to the domestic violence and all that. So she was fearful for the first 6 months that he was out, that things would turn back. And I don't want my wife to be in fear. So this is why I've made this decision to do this. She's happy with it. She's all for it. And I think it'll help out better and be more productive that way than going back into the house upon my release.
Understanding how you became involved in domestic violence abuse may be helpful to you if you want to stop being a batterer. Many batterers were exposed to domestic violence as children, or were even abused themselves. But insight about the past is not an excuse for current behavior. No matter what has occurred in your past, you cannot blame your current behavior on what someone else did to you. Instead, use that knowledge to help change the present and the future for you and those you care about.
Batterers will many times during evaluations and assessments give you a family history that shows a lot of physical violence, a lot of emotional abuse and such. And if you think about your goal and your role as a parent, you are a constant role model. So if that's what you saw growing up, if you don't know any better, if you've never received any education or nobody's ever told you that that wasn't proper, then you may grow up thinking that's the way you run a family. That's how you keep everybody in check. But we know now that that's not how you keep a family in check. You need to move beyond those beliefs. You can't fall back on those, your childhood, and think that that's, well, nobody told me any different, so it worked for Dad, and Mom never seemed to say much about it, and yeah, it was a little rowdy in the house, and yeah, we all are pretty, messed up, but it seemed to be okay. You don't need to go on with that. You don't need to continue with that belief because it's not correct. That's not how you raise children, and that's not how you run a family.
When you feel that you grew up in a terrible situation, and many, many people did, it's a reason for problems, but it's not an excuse. So I don't believe it should be used as an excuse to say, I had this terrible childhood, so I can hit my wife and I can hurt her. It is a reason. It means that you have to do very hard work to get to the deep part of yourself that believes that you're bad. Because that's usually the reason we did it. Because if you really value yourself, you are not going to hit your wife. And you're not going to go rob a store or use crack cocaine because you value you. So it gets back to building that sense of core value within yourself. Most of the people who are involved in domestic violence, and it's mostly men, most of them don't feel good about themselves. So what happens is if they come home and their wife hasn't cooked dinner, they think that it's something their wife did because they didn't value them. And so maybe she's been with a sick child all day, but you walk in and your knee-jerk reaction is, if she cared about me, she would have cooked dinner. So it's always looking at things in terms of your own value. So that's why you've got to feel good about yourself, so you can walk in and go, what happened to dinner? Instead of automatically assuming that people are doing things like, if they cut you off in traffic, they're cutting you off because they don't value you. They're doing it to you. And that's something that is so hard to break, that habit of feeling like they're doing it to me. When mostly people are just schlepping through life. They're not doing it to you. They're just doing what they learned to do.
As we mentioned in the first program, men who watch these programs, no matter what their involvement with domestic violence, can feel defensive. But you will find that those who understand domestic violence and want to stop it do not want to alienate men. They want to share information with you, educate you about the realities of domestic violence, and work with you to help stop the abuse.
You know, the thing that we're looking for is a partnership in relationships, a partnership in this education awareness program that we're looking at. It's, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for equality to make things more harmonious. We're not trying to demonize anybody. We're not trying, it's us against them. And that's the things that you have to look at. It's not that we're trying to say that it's all women and it's all men that do these different things. It's the fact that we need to work together. Let's get together and work on this issue so it goes away.
Finally, many people feel that being a real man means being strong and tough. And that means you have to be harsh or even violent with other people to be respected. This is only half true. Teaching people to be afraid of you is not the same as being respected. But it is true that a real man does have to be strong and tough, but first and foremost with himself. He has to learn to have control over his actions if he wants self-respect and the respect of those who care for him.
I feel that if they went, you know, to counseling, or if they tried to better themselves, they dug deep within themselves to figure out why they were like that and how they could make themselves a better person, and they took the necessary steps to do that, then I would give them another chance. But if they didn't, or if they just said they were sorry and tried to make it up to me without really getting to the root of the problem, then they're not going to get any better.
It's really hard, I think, with the way society helps form men's opinions of themselves. We're taught in society as a man that you have to be tough, that you have to be in charge, and that you have to be in control. But, you know, a real man can say, I've made a mistake. This is not right. My family deserves much better than this. And that is a real man. To do that, to make that major step, takes courage, it takes strength, and it takes belief that you can try to do better. You have to want to do better. And all of that is forming, hopefully, a new discipline pattern. It helps you form a new outlook on yourself, and I think you'll have a lot more respect for yourself. When you do take this role, it's tough. It's not going to be easy.